Ronnie Price, Mayor.
Homer, City Council President.
Phil Hamilton, City Council Member.
Buck Buchanan, Police Chief.
Donna Davis, Chief Financial Officer.
Shadow Fire Chief.
Rick Lance, Director of Public Works and Utilities.
JT Klaus, City Attorney.
Dana Engstrom, City Clerk.
Jess
Jolene.
Mangus, Director of Community Development.
Jolene Graham, Assistant City Administrator.
Jennifer McCausland, City Administrator.
Thank you. At this time, we'll call John Langley from East Point Church of Christ to lead us in invocation. How you doing, sir?
Doing great. Good to see y'all. Let's bow. Father, may we come before you with humble hearts and consider how we talk to each other and continue to have humble hearts when we visit over the things that are going to be spoken about tonight. I pray, Father, for our first responders, that you would continue to give them a heart of courage, of strength, and will to serve. And I ask you, Father, to give our councilman and our mayor a spirit of readiness, a spirit of wisdom, and the ability to discern tonight and all nights. And Father, I pray that as we spend time together this evening, that we will see your goodness and your greatness, even in the people that we deal with tonight and talk to tonight. Would you please bless this meeting in Jesus' name? Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. All right. At this time, I'll open the floor for public forum. If you have anything you'd like to say, share with us, please state your name and keep it short. No takers? Public forum is closed. Acceptance of agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move to accept the agenda as presented.
Second, Hamilton.
Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. 7, award, 7-1, Officer Aslan, Life-Saving Award. I said that wrong, didn't I?
Elson.
Elson?
Hey, Blake, why don't you come on up? Mayor and Council, I appreciate the opportunity to present some awards tonight. We have 3 awards we're giving out. One of them is a Life-Saving Award, which is rare we are able to do that, but it's very important for, question was asked, we do this on the gala as well. It's something that we started last year to present during there, but the difference is they can't have their family here. So it's important for them to have their family, their kids, their loved ones that can attend this and see this and be able to celebrate them and praise them for the hard work they've done throughout the year. So the first one we're going to do is a Life-Saving Award. That's to get this award, it's be confirmed upon any member of the department whose actions are directly responsible for saving or sustaining a human life. This award may be when evidence suggests actions by a member prolonged a person's life or to the extent the person was released to medical authorities, even if the person later passed away. This award will be presented in the form of a ribbon bar and certificate for sworn members, and for non-sworn members, a certificate. So Lieutenant Hampton wrote on July 17th, 2023, at approximately 5 o'clock in the morning, Officer Blake Elson was dispatched to the Life Care Center on 620 West 21st Street in response to unresponsive patient. Upon arrival at the Life Care Center and in the patient's room, Officer Elson took over chest compressions, and upon the first compression, felt the cartilage from the chest break. After forming about 40 initial compressions, Life Care staff had a bag Malvaskin ready for the patient. Officer Elson and other staff members alternated compressions and breaths for the patient until EMS arrived and took over the patient's care. MS personnel were able to remove fluid from the patient's lungs and ultimately resuscitated the patient. Officer Elson tendered to the patient's daughter, keeping her calm until EMS transported the patient to Kansas Medical Center for further treatment. Captain Chris Matson from the Andover Fire and Rescue later confirmed the hospital had admitted the patient, and Officer Elson's actions were the responsibility for directly sustaining the life of the patient until she could be released to medical authorities. Therefore, having met the requirements of this general order recommended by the Awards Committee and approved by the Chief of Police, Officer Elson is awarded the Life-Saving Award. Next, we're going to do the Officer of the Year Award. Lieutenant Arnold. So this was nominated by more than one person. So it's quite a few people saw a lot of actions, a lot of things done by Lieutenant Arnold this past year. So Frank Gomez and MPO1 Robert Garland wrote, Lieutenant Arnold demonstrates outstanding leadership at times when his officers have taken on multiple reports. Lieutenant Arnold will help his caseloads and take reports himself due to his compassion, recognition of his subordinates' workload, and commitment to positive crew morale. Other examples of his commitment to the department and our mission include training 3 newly hired officers during multiple phases of FTO. That's field training when we're having a brand new officer come in there and teaching them how to be a police officer. Generally, lieutenants only train during the last phase where they get them for 2 weeks, but he continued to do this even during other parts of the training itself. So Lieutenant Arnold completed tasks generally not assigned to this position, potentially preventing the department from using funds for building equipment and repairs by repairing a conference room door and the door's locker room for a cost of $24. The estimate on this would have cost us $520. So he snaked the drain room in the men's locker room, potentially saving $315. He's always doing things of, how can I fix something? How can I do this? So it's important to know that during this, that he's always looking to save money, which I love. Lieutenant Arnold took it upon himself to repair a broken treadmill in the fitness center, saving the department over $1,200. Actually, it was a lot more than that because he did his research, found out there was a thing we could replace inside of it, would have cost us $1,000 to have somebody come out of it. Now, this is a new treadmill, but we learned that because we are considered commercial, our warranty doesn't count. So he found a way to fix it so we didn't have to purchase a brand new one, so it saved us a lot of money there. Finally, he resolved an issue we have with the garage door openers for 10% of the estimated $3,200 cost. Yep. So he's not going to Parks or Public Works. He's staying with us. I'm telling you that. He's very valuable. So his leadership style allows his subordinates to independently make decisions while allowing for collaboration when direction is needed. He leads by example by having a self-starting attitude towards the mission and duties of the Andover Police Department. Sergeant Wilkinson pointed out that Lieutenant Arnold volunteered to switch from days to nights to assist other shifts for covering vacations and holidays. This selfless act prevented officers from working 7 12-hour shifts in a row to maintain minimum staffing. In doing so, Lieutenant Arnold covered the beat that would have been assigned to an officer on vacation, even though he was the highest ranking officer. Sergeant Gomez and MPO1 Katie Russell stated, Lieutenant Arnold always goes above and beyond when assisting citizens, often staying with them longer than the call of his service requires. His compassion is displayed as he listens to citizens' problems or provides them a ride home when it's not required. He is always willing to assist other officers when they need assistance, both professionally and in their personal lives. Therefore, for his actions, efforts, and attitude demonstrated daily for the past 12 months, as nominated by the Sergeant Gomez, Sergeant Wilkinson, MPO1 Garland, and MPO1 Russell, recommended by the Awards Board and the Chief of Police, Lieutenant Jason Arnold was awarded the 2023 Officer of the Year. You want to say anything? Should I?
Thank you, Sergeant Gomez, Officer Garland. You guys are my Quan. Without you guys, I couldn't do my job.
Can I get your phone number? I spent afternoon under my sink today. Thank you, sir.
911.
Andrea? So this is for our Civilian of the Year Award. So Captain Tom Gresham wrote, "The Andover Police Department's goal is to provide public service excellence with integrity, compassion, and the wise use of resources. The department has achieved this objective through the accreditation process. Andrea took it on the role of accreditation manager when the department had already completed 3/4 of a recent re-accreditation cycle. However, when she took over, there were some issues that things weren't up to date yet because we had gone through a transition from another accreditation manager. She jumped in there and did an excellent job of addressing those, being very new into law enforcement as well. She had no law enforcement experience in the process, so this is very new to her. Andrea immediately started connecting the documentations, which she had no easy task, as there are over 180 standards the department must comply with and maintain accreditation. Many of these standards have multiple parts, bringing the total number of items that Andrea must show to the department complies with nearly 575. She must also demonstrate compliance with these items in each of the 4 years in the accreditation cycle. Under time constraints, she brought the department's file into compliance before an assessor's review in late March. The assessor reviewed 1/4 of the required documentation, only find a few minor little errors. And those were corrected immediately, something that we could have needed a different proof that we had, but we had it. So it wasn't anything that was bad at all. So in December, 2 assessors from Kalia came to the Andover Police Department to review our observable standards and conducted interviews with department members, city leaders, community partners, and community members. After the review, both assessors praised Andrea's professionalism, hospitality, and attention to detail. These qualities, among with tenacity, compassion, integrity, and dedication, truly define Andrea as an employee and a friend. Without Andrea's effort, the department would not have been in an excellent position to gain reaccreditation. In addition to her work on the agency assessment files and the compliance, Andrea is an ambassador for the Kansas Accreditation Coalition and the Kansas Law Enforcement Accreditation Program. This program is very new. It just started last December, and she's already a big part of one of the leaders in that program that we're doing now. In this role, she is assistant in other agencies in attempting to gain accreditation by answering their questions or providing guidance on how to comply with standards. She has quickly become a resource for several agencies across Kansas that are navigating the accreditation process. Andrea also serves on multiple committees for the Kansas Law Enforcement Accreditation Coalition, a separate group of agencies that are accredited or are seeking accreditation through Kalia. Locally, Andrea is a member of the city's Wellness Committee and is a driving force on the Butler County Law Enforcement Memorial Committee. She has represented the Andover Police Department at Citizens Police Academy, Donuts with Me, Greater Andover Days, the Police and Fire Community Cookout, and National Night Out. Andrea's outstanding performance in completing and correcting the department's assessment files, dedicated to the department's mission and values, and commitment to the department's success in the community make her the best candidate for the 2023 Civilian Year Award. Therefore, her actions for the past 12 months, as nominated by Captain Grisham, recommended by the awards committee, and approved by the Chief of Police, Accreditation Manager Andrea Evans, is awarded the 2023 Civilian of the Year Award.
All right.
Now you'll see a mass exit.
Lose my audience. All right. Proclamation 8-1, proclamation Severe Weather Preparedness Week. Councilman Homer will read this to us.
Whereas the severe weather and tornado season in Kansas has always been known as a potentially dangerous time, historically producing property damage, injuries, and even loss of life. And whereas since 1990, the National Weather Service has issued over 1,000 severe thunderstorm warnings and more than 90 tornado warnings for Butler County. These included the storms that produced the deadly 1991 F5 tornado and the destructive 2022 EF3 tornado that impacted the city of Andover and rural Butler County. And whereas everyone is potentially at risk during severe weather and tornado season, which reaches its peak in Kansas between March and June. And whereas the National Weather Service, in conjunction with the state of Kansas and local jurisdictions, will be conducting a statewide tornado drill on Wednesday, March 6th at 11 a.m. And whereas the purpose of the Severe Weather Preparedness Week is to heighten the public's understanding of the dangers associated with severe weather and tornadoes. And now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Homer Henry, proclaim the week of March 4th through March 8th, 2024, in the city of Andover, Kansas, as Severe Weather Preparedness Week.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Consent agenda 9-1 through 9-7.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move to approve consent agenda items 9.1 through 9.7 as presented. God bless you.
Second, Hamilton.
Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. 10-1 vending request Easter egg event. And Megan and I know, and Beth are gonna, I know.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I have Beth Green here with me tonight. She is our special events coordinator who we hired back in January, so she's still very new to the role, but she will be taking over Greater Andover Days and Hometown Christmas moving forward, all of the planning and execution for those two events, along with any new events that we add to our lineup this year or years to come. So with that, we are here to ask your permission to vend at a new event, our Easter egg hunt. This event is scheduled for Saturday, March 23rd from 9 until noon in Central Park. We will have an Easter egg hunt, a part of this event, obviously, along with egg decorating, a bonnet decorating. We're also going to partner with the Andover Public Library to do a story time and a craft. The event is free and open to the public, more tailored towards the younger kids, so 6 and under, but obviously all families are welcome. So we would just like to ask your permission to vend at this event so we can move forward on reaching out to some food trucks, thinking some brunch, ice cream, snow cone places. But if you have any questions, we're available to answer those.
Anyone?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move to approve the sale of goods and services, including food trucks, to vend in Central Park during the Easter egg hunt on Saturday, March 23rd, 2024, 9 a.m. to noon.
Second, Hamilton.
Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, ladies. 11-1 Capital Federal Amphitheater Budget, and Rick Landreth is going to speak to us on this.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. As part of the agreement that was entered into with ASM Global last year is the requirement of ASM Global to present to the City Council for their approval of a budget annually. ASM Global has presented a budget that is essentially the same that was in the pro forma that was presented to the council during the process. Staff is recommending based on that for the approval of this budget. I would say that AG Boleski is here and can talk a little bit about the budget if you would like to have any questions about it. I'm sure he would be glad to answer any questions.
I've got one question. AJ, I saw in the budget, there's a line item for parking revenue. I didn't know, is the pricing strategy going to be similar to kind of Interest Bank Arena, where it's going to depend on proximity to the event, on what's charged, and will that vary by event on the pricing tiers based off proximity?
Thank you for the question. AJ Bolesky with ASM Global. So we are working on that process right now. And I do want to introduce, Kat, you can just stay seated, but I'll introduce you real quick. Catherine Ewing is our amphitheater director that we just hired a couple weeks ago, comes to us from Riverfest. And then we've also hired a booking or marketing and box office manager as well. So together, we are putting together those plans now and talking through what those look like. We would foresee some charges for parking on the actual site itself within the park. As far as what the breakdown is there yet, we're not quite there, but we are working through that process. And we would probably most likely be talking about concert events.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move to approve the submitted budget for the operation of the Capitol Federal Amphitheater for 2024.
Second, Hamilton.
Any further questions or discussion?
I do just have one quick
Yes,
one. Rick, will this budget always be done at this time every year, or will it coincide with our normal budget time?
I don't anticipate being able to have it coincide with the original budget because
Okay.
it'll be more later in the year, probably around the time we adopt our budget. We are hoping that we can have at least a draft of what they're proposing to give the council update, and we probably will try to include into our budget what their anticipated budget is. But we've had several discussions, and the way the timing will work will be a little bit close at that time.
Thanks, Rick.
Anyone else? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. 11-2 memorandum of understanding with ASM Global.
So, Mr. Mayor and Council, as ASM Global began to reach out to promoters to acquire about interest into having events out at the amphitheater, a common feedback they were getting from a lot of the promoters that didn't show interest in it since it didn't have a fixed seating type of areas so they could do scalable tickets. As you're probably aware, tickets tend to get a little more expensive in the better locations and a little bit cheaper in the locations that are maybe not quite as desirable, let's say. I would say there's not really a bad seat in our venue, but it's just the way the world works. So to make it work, ASM Global started looking at some rental options and trying to rent 5,000 uniform chairs in the Wichita market was a little bit problematic, and they were unable to find any in the Wichita market. So they looked at and approached the city about a capital investment in it, capital improvement. Staff advised ASM Global that we did not have that kind of fund budgeted right now for that venue, and that that was something that we would have to do in our long-range planning if we were to go down that road. ASM then went back to their parent company and engaged in with them, and they came back to the staff with a proposal of them paying for the chairs. We would buy them and own them, but they would reimburse us for, or pay us for the chairs. We would purchase, on your agenda tonight, you have a couple of things on there. We would purchase these storage containers and we would own those outright. And then they would charge a per ticket fee, approximately $2 per ticket, or to the promoter for the chairs. They would retain that. They would recover over time. They would recover their initial investment and up to a potential of a profit of about 30% over time. After that time, there's some, the fees can be then split up and so forth. So they went through the process. We decided that it needed to be documented and through an MOU. It's really not part of the original agreement, and didn't think that an agreement amendment needed to be done, but more of an MOU. So it was memorialized for those who come after us trying to figure out what happened. So before you is this memorial. I will point out that should the city decide to exit out of the agreement early, that we would be responsible for paying back that investment Staff doesn't have cause to think there's a reason why we would exit out early. But I would also comment that legal has reviewed this and it is also compliance with in the MOU with the gas spacious laws, which doesn't obligate future councils to expenditures to. If anyone has any questions for either myself or AJ, we'd be happy to try to answer those.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I got a couple questions or statements as well, but one, I want to thank staff and AJ and ASM Global for being, I feel like, a good partner in trying to work towards an agreement here. I think that's awesome. Rick, I guess one of my questions is, what are we doing with all the chairs that we had previously?
So I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
So we have about 300 chairs that are lawn chairs, that fold out type of thing. And they, obviously you can't put as many people in the seating as those. We've talked and ASM has thought about potentially putting those up on the patio and doing some sort of ticket level up there. So we would have those available for SM to use for those events. Those are still, but they won't be used in this seating scheme.
Are we going to make sure that we try the chairs out that are going to be purchased so that they'll sit on the grass, dirt appropriately? As a self-described husky individual, sometimes when you have a folding chair that can penetrate dirt, or if we've had rain, are we going to trial those chairs out to make sure that they stay above ground?
That's a very good question. And AJ can comment on where, but these are exact same chairs that are used in another outdoor venue that has a lawn type of setting. And we did get feedback. So these chairs have a little bit of amendment to them than what it's like an added option that's like a little lower bar on them that keeps them from sinking down into the ground. Because as a larger person, I can comment that I've sat in chairs like that and had the same experiences. So, but that's another venue that they manage, and they've had a lot of good luck with this particular chair and brand, and had it in operation for some time.
And was this the venue in Nebraska?
I believe so, yes.
And why didn't we, ASM Global, maybe AJ, why didn't we think about this before now? And I guess on that topic, we had a promoter, I guess we were self-promoting before, and we didn't have this issue. We had bands come in and didn't have this issue. Is this just really a financial piece, kind of a helping return the investment that we're doing here?
Yeah, so this is basically a little bit of a different strategy. We talked about this strategy when we met back in the fall during this process. And the goal is to bring promoters into the venue, have promoters partner with us, take on some of that risk. I think in the past, the city has bought the shows directly. A lot of times, not saying that happened here, but a lot of times pay more for the acts when it's not a promoter that's involved and in the business. And a lot of times they're doing multiple shows with one artist. They can get a more competitive price. And so in talking to the promoters and the agents that represent the artists, it became and we didn't really start those conversations until the contract was,
Approved
being
in
signed
January.
about that time. And so once we got into this further, it was very apparent that we needed to have chairs, not necessarily fixed like in concrete chairs, but we needed to have seats. So that, as Rick mentioned, so that the tickets can be scaled and they can maximize the gross to be able to pay artists to come into the event, to the venue.
Thanks, AJ. I appreciate that answer and that clear understanding of that, being upfront about it too. So one final question, Rick, and kind of maybe skipping ahead to maybe another item on here, but where do we plan on putting these storage containers when the chairs are in them? Are they just going to be in back of the amphitheater, or are we going to put them somewhere more discreet,
So,
hidden by trees?
so depending on how close the events are in the season, the acts are, we will probably leave them lined up to where the doors open up onto the concrete roadway that runs behind the amphitheater in that area so that the carts can be wheeled out and moved around. Staff has identified a way to move them ourselves. We don't necessarily have to pay. We'll try that out and see. And then we could put them, depending on the break and so forth, we could haul them back in an area that's a little less visible, or if we need to move them out, or say like Taco Fest uses that field a little bit and stuff, we could move them out for that. Or if we can't move them, ASM has said that they would pay the fee in between events to have the units moved. As you can imagine, that get kind of expensive kind of quick. If you're moving it in, moving the chairs out, moving out while the concert is, move it back in, load the chairs in, and move it back out. You get to moving it quite a bit. If it's just once a season or something like that, it's not too bad. But there are wheels that you can attach to these things, and you can wheel them around with our larger equipment and move them. So we have a couple ideas where we could put them, depending on how easy they transport and stuff. It depends on where we would put them, but we have a couple ideas. But probably for a season when, if you have some events, not too far apart, we would probably leave them there. Depending on what they look like, we've painted them in the past to make them a little more attractive. We
could Andover brand them.
Yeah. And ASM has also brought up the possibility of putting them in a location that would potentially screen the back of the venue. We would put screening up to do that. So there's a couple different options we're working through. We haven't exactly landed on the best. And usually with things like this, well, I'll be quite honest, we put them in one spot and then we go, okay, it could be better if we did it a little bit differently. So I'd be lying if I told you I knew exactly where we're going to put them for the whole time, but I'm confident we can find a location that works.
The chairs themselves, though, would be much more efficient to put up and take down than lawn chairs, correct?
Yeah, they'll have carts.
Right.
We don't have enough carts just because the way the financing worked out to put them all on. Some of them will be on pallets, and we can move pallets, or they can move pallets. But the carts, they can wheel them out. Our staff will not be putting those chairs out. That will be ASM's responsibility to put those out and pick them up and put them away. But they have chair carts that they can wheel along in the concrete pathways and get relatively close.
All right, thanks, Rick.
And I somewhat coincidentally got to work with this vendor last month and got about 128 of these chairs from them. I couldn't tell exactly what model we were ordering here, but we got one of the lower end models. Those chairs they're super comfortable in my opinion. And probably more importantly, the material they're made out of is super durable. It's kind of like a hardened, not rubber, but it's a black material, and it seems to hold up extremely well.
All right. Anyone else? Can I get
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I move to authorize the mayor to sign the memorandum of understanding with ASM Global for the purchase of event chairs.
Second, Hamilton.
Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. Purchase of storage containers.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move to approve the purchase of 6 storage containers from Site Box Storage, Wichita, Kansas, in the amount of $27,642.
Second, Hamilton.
Any further questions or discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
just one thing, Rick, I definitely like the look, whether it's putting ASM logo and Andover on there as a shared logoing. I definitely like the idea of painting the boxes. But also I want us to think about too, if we as a city are going to enforce other businesses in town to remove site boxes, conics, storage containers, I'd like us to really think about where we're going to store them so that they're not visible to the public during the park, if we can help it.
Thank you.
All in favor, doggone it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. Purchase of event chairs.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move to approve the purchase of the chairs and chair carts from Mighty Light Incorporated, Dallas, Texas, in the amount of $249,996.
Second, Hamilton.
Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. Just so people in the public know that we put a lot of effort into, staff has and governing body into bringing this team together. And I'm really looking forward to, and I think we'll be better, serving our citizens with the concerts and events that you all provide. So I thank you for joining our team. All right, 12-1, renewal of asset management software.
Mr. Mayor and Council, before you is the annual renewal of the asset management software we use for all of our public works facilities, and staff uses this. I would ironically comment that after this cold weather snap and rain, all the gravel streets got deteriorated throughout all of Butler County and a lot of Sedgwick County, as you may have heard. And to the point that the Kansas Department of Emergency Management is working with the state on a national declaration of a national disaster, local disaster, to get some FEMA funding. Ironically, while that funding brings money, a lot of times it brings a lot of headache for staff. And so we were requested for some initial estimates and such. And I was very pleased to be able to go into this software because we track what our guys are doing. We track the materials, we track our equipment time. And while we didn't track it as a FEMA event, so we had to go in and check some FEMA boxes in there because that changes the rate you charge for your equipment and your labor hours. With a little bit of tweaking, we were able to get some really good financial numbers. Just so you know, we have about $75,000 in at this point between our equipment time, labor, and materials into the road repairs on our gravel roads. And we anticipate probably before we're done, it would be about $100,000 worth of, not all that is direct expense. Some of it's payroll and our equipment time. And our equipment time is a little bit higher if it's a FEMA rate because we use the FEMA codes for that. And also the labor rates are a little bit different because the way they reimburse you for your overhead. But that being said, while we wouldn't get all that back, if it does get declared, we are in a very good position to be able to print out and give them the reports and the documentation that would put us in a position to recover that funding. So I just wanted to, that was separate. That happened after I'd actually already wrote this. So I was pleased with that results of the software for that. The other part of this software is going to help us better plan as we continue to get data in here and continue to refine our data, better plan for our infrastructure replacement. One of the things this software allows us to do is continually model our street replacements and sewer lines and such like that, park assets. Eventually we'll get to, we're not all the way into our facilities, but we'll get into the facilities and be modeling that, and it'll help us better project, fund, and plan our CIP purchases for a lot of our assets, if not all of them, as time goes on. We're in asset management, we're pretty new. It takes some of this stuff. We were ahead of the curve. And in others, we didn't have a lot of data to bring in, and so we'll have to go get it. I will also tell you that this software package is being selected and utilized by 2, I think maybe 3 communities in the metropolitan area, and they are in the beginning phases of implementation. So we're a little bit ahead of those. I'm hoping that that gives us some opportunity for some local, regional talks amongst staff as we further figure out the best way to use the software. If anyone has any questions or comments or concerns about it, I'm happy to try to answer those.
Mr. Mayor?
Anybody? Yep.
Rick, what would you say as far as the data going in? What's our percentage at, or even just in a fraction of how much data is in there, or how much is yet to go in there to be utilized, if that makes sense?
So on facilities, we got a long ways to go. On pavement, we're 100% in there or near 100%. You know, sometimes we lag a little bit when we add a new street, you know, or something. Signage is about the same way. So it really depends what you're talking about. A lot of our items that we had already had mapped out in our GIS, we were able to import that in because this system works hand in hand with your GIS software. And so because we had such a robust GIS software program for a pretty small city, we were able to import and not have to go collect that data. We'd been collecting it, irrigation systems, park features and those type of things, trails, sidewalks are in there. We're building out our traffic signal a little bit more to get a little more detail in there and build in. The Evangelist has, it tells you, it gives you, okay, work order. It says it's time to go check this and do an inspection. And so things don't get looked over because somebody has to remember in their head, they're going to get a task that's get assigned to them in the system, and they'll see it and they can go do that. So as we continue to work on that, we'll continue to build that out. We are trying to work with, or we are going to be doing the fire station will be our first real fire station, will be our first complete facility that we'll put in with, along with routine maintenance task in there to make sure those things get done based on the manufacturer's recommendations. And we'll, when we get into that point, we'll work with the fire chief on building out a replacement curve, a degradation curve on those components. A lot of this stuff, there's some standardized information out there for AC units, for this and that, and we'll put those in so we can kind of have those in there and help them assist as the building owners of that facility on their future budgets going forward too. But I'd say you asked for an estimate, and that was a real long answer to say I'm not really sure, but I would say we are well along for a lot of it, and a few items we got some ways to go.
Thanks, Rick.
Anyone else? Can I get a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
move to approve the annual renewal of the OpenGov Asset Management Software license in the amount of $28,428.02.
Second, Hamilton.
I'd like to point out that Rick brought up all the troubles we had with the roads, the dirt roads in town, and just a little over 3 miles. And your team handled it extremely well for what they had to work with. And I just can't say enough. 99.9% of the people are always, just like always, we're just thrilled with the way y'all did it. And I just want to tell them thank you for being diligent and hardworking as they are to make them roads passable. So.
Yeah, it was very difficult to even get the material. They ran out of material at the quarry because all the roads in the counties and everywhere else is in pretty bad shape.
Has that ever happened before as far as the roads being that bad?
I've never, in my 30 years experience in public works, never seen the gravel roads just deteriorate to the point where it looks like some of those roads look like you didn't have any material on them. There's material there, but the surface just broke down. And on some of the rural roads where they became impassable, completely impassable. I know that.
Well, they did a great job.
Thank you. I'll pass that along.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. 13-1, Prairie Point at Cornerstone Third, Garver Design Agreement. And Jolene's going to talk to us about this.
Good
All right, ma'am.
evening, Mayor and council members. Before you tonight is an agreement, is a follow-up action item to action you took on January 30th at your regular meeting. This is for the design and the construction services for Prairie Point at Cornerstone Third. And I do have Ken Lee here with Garver if you have any further questions.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I move to approve the agreement with Garver LLC, Wichita, Kansas, for the engineering, design, and construction phase services for the public improvements related to Prairie Point at Cornerstone Third Edition in the not to exceed amount of $140,613.
Second, Hamilton.
Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. 14-1, Harry Street annexation. And Les will speak to us on this.
Mr. Mayor and Council, you may remember some discussions we had in goal setting for 2024 and in our comprehensive plan to square up the boundaries of the city, to fill in some of those patchwork boundaries of streets and properties throughout the city. The first before you tonight is to take Harry Street wholly into the city from 159th Street, the Butler County line, over to Prairie Creek Road. That benefits not only Public Works for maintenance of the roads, but also law enforcement, as well as benefiting those properties that are adjacent by having city maintenance on those streets that are used as though they were city streets, even though they may or may not have been technically in the city in the past. This matter has been before the county commissioners, and they wholeheartedly support the squaring up of the boundaries.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
less on 159th, it doesn't come all the way to Harry. That's why you're saying boundary? Or, because it curves there. Is that still 159th though?
Harry is a through street that actually goes all the way to Kingman County.
There's a map attached to this
No, that's not, well,
that shows the boundary.
159th Street is the Butler County line. I think what's a little confusing there, Homer, is that from Kellogg to Harry Street, there is a jog in 159th where it actually traverses about a quarter of a mile to the west before it connects into Harry Street. But then south of Harry Street, it's back on the county line alignment.
all right, thank you.
To be clear, it runs, Harry Street runs, I'm sorry, 159th runs from 400 by Jacobs around to the, now it's the City of Wichita wastewater treatment plant.
Runs around it, right?
Right.
Yeah. I just thought it was called a different street right there, so my bad.
It does have a different name on that quarter of a mile
Okay,
jog.
right, okay, thank you. Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move to adopt an ordinance annexing the Harry Street right-of-way from 159th Street to Prairie Creek Road in the corporate limits of City of Andover.
Second, Hamilton.
Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The motion carries 5-0. Special use 224 East Central Avenue, Z-SU 230006. And this time I'll read this checklist. This application is requesting to allow immediate care facility in the MXR multiple family mixed residential district generally located at 224 East Central Avenue, Andover, Kansas. Before we proceed to this hearing, I'd like to ask council if any of them intend to disqualify themselves from participating in this case because they have a conflict of interest.
No.
No.
Oh,
I now ask the council if any of them have received any ex parte, verbal or written communications prior to this agenda item which they would like to share.
no.
No.
So JT, would you explain to us exactly what ex parte is in this particular situation, what that might entail?
Yeah, it's a Latin word that means you had a conversation with someone outside of official proceedings. It's applied here because you're sitting in a quasi judicial capacity. You're not in a position to exercise free will when you're reviewing matters of zoning. You are to act justitiously and follow the law and to apply the factors as applied by the Planning Commission. And so they refer to ex parte communications, which could be disqualifying. If, for instance, if you went out and discussed with all the neighbors your problems with this particular zoning, then and or wrote everybody a letter, or everybody wrote you a letter, that would be an ex parte communication. I think it's important to note that they're not necessarily required to be legally disclosed. You'll know from any workshop I have, I would not want you to have them. But if you do have them, like somebody called you on the phone and lobbied you a specific direction towards this, this would be the time to disclose them, because it could be purifying in that you're not hiding it. It wasn't something you did under the table. You have this opportunity to disclose conversations with a developer or anybody else who might have contacted you. So that's what we're looking for.
And you would recommend that they disqualify themselves if they did one of those things just up for the wholesome of it, or?
No, I don't think they need to recuse themselves as long as they didn't make a decision before the evidence is presented last meeting and at this meeting, and as long as they've had an open mind, I don't think they need to disqualify themselves. The only question is whether they want to disclose that so that if anything is ever challenged, it's not something that they tried to hide from the public, and this is their opportunity to do that.
All right, thank you, sir. Again, I ask, I lost myself. I will now ask if the council has, any of them have received ex parte verbal or written communications prior to this agenda item which they would like to share.
No.
No.
Has the city clerk received any protest petitions on this case?
No, sir.
I now ask council members if they have all received copies of the draft minutes of the Planning Commission for January 16, 2024 and February 2024, which summarizes the hearing of this case.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, everybody? I now call on City Zoning Administrator Les Mangus to provide us with a report on this case.
Mr. Mayor, Council, you may remember your last action was to return this zoning special use case to the Planning Commission for reconsideration. The Planning Commission did take up that reconsideration at their February 20th meeting, and they had the advantage of having the applicant on site to answer some questions about what exactly this facility is, how it operates with regards to the effects on the adjoining neighborhood and walk-in traffic and so forth. Planning Commission took a long time to deliberate this and took in some new information from the applicant. The applicant is here tonight if you too need more information, but I think the key to that information was that this is an inpatient facility, that the patients are checked in, they're there for a term, they can leave of their own will, but they have to be checked out. It's not a walk-in, walk-out clinic arrangement. It's more like an inpatient hospital. And at the end of that discussion, the Planning Commission returned recommendations that are very similar to what they had given you at your last meeting, with the exception of some clarifications of the way the facility would operate.
Are there any questions for the zoning administrator from council members? No?
No.
Have any written communications been received
No,
for the
sir.
clerk? I'm sorry,
No, sir.
I drew a blank. We would like to welcome everyone interested in this agenda. Did I skip one? Does the applicant wish to present any new information? Thank you. How are you?
Evening.
I thought I'd seen that I traveled all the way here. I think I'd go for a minute. Frank Brader, 601 Heritage Drive, Jupiter, Florida. The one thing I did want to mention or reiterate was I think a big part of the conversation last time was AMA discharges against medical advice, people that choose to leave rather than stay the term. And I had mentioned some statistics at the time, and I might have been a little gray on them, so I brushed up and I was ballpark. So the national AMA average for SUD treatment is 1.2%. There are 76 beds in this facility. If that were full 100% of the time, all year, that would account for 912 clients. Being that these facilities run at about 80%, I'm going to put 83% as an average. That's 756.96. When we times that by 0.012, we come up with literally 9.0. So we're talking about 9 discharges per year against medical advice, at least statistically. Again, about half, 40 to 50% of these clients will not be coming from the immediate area. They will not have transportation out of the immediate area. It would not be left on the curb, right? They just wouldn't be discharged to go wander around Wichita or Andover, as it were. They would be placed in the care of an immediate family member or someone that was responsible, or our techs would take them to the airport to make sure they were, they got on their plane to go back from whence they came. But that would, again, be under doctor's orders, right? Even in AMA, the doctor and the facility would be responsible for. So it doesn't happen very quickly, and it happens with great oversight.
All right. Are there any questions to the applicant from city council or staff, city staff?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I don't necessarily have a question. I just want to thank you. I've listened back to the other meeting that you had. Appreciated all the information that you gave. It obviously shows how much you value the community and what you guys are doing. And I know it was a long trip for you, at least twice. So thank you for that.
I appreciate it. No worries.
Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, I do have. And just Frank, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Thanks again for coming. I do appreciate that sentiment. I think one of the questions that we had at the city council meeting last time, or concerns, was that you wouldn't have individuals come into your facility on a daily basis and then going away in a clinic type
That's a
setting.
clinic
Right.
setting.
That's not what this is,
Methadone
correct?
clinic. You go for your daily dose and you go to your job. Those places are generally, we have them in West Palm Beach, and I don't personally care for that type of treatment. It's a maintenance program. It doesn't remove, methadone is a long-term maintenance program. These guys aren't on it for 90 days and then they're sober. They're on it for years. And I don't see that. First of all, I don't see it conducive to recovery or the client. And this is an
That's not what this
inpatient-
business is.
Absolutely not. This
Okay.
is an inpatient facility, not a clinic.
Thank you.
And maybe just to restate something you said, you guys don't even utilize methadone at this
No, not
facility.
at
It'll only
all.
be Suboxone.
That is, do you know, it is the federal government, the DEA regulates methadone. Not even a pharmacist, not a doctor, the DEA. and they come in, and my friend has a license for that, and she doesn't dispense much of it. It's a rare occasion at her facility. And she has double safe and the DEA coming in there, you know, every few months for the 12 doses she hands out, you know, a month. So no, that is an extremely separate and intensive program that again, that doesn't even align with me ideologically. I've been sober many years myself, and methadone treatment is truly maintenance. It's not recovery. So it just doesn't align with my thought process.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
And I believe I read in here kind of what reiterate Paul said. You will have a director of nursing on staff.
Oh, sure.
A medical director, so a doctor out in the community,
Absolutely.
psychiatrist on
Absolutely.
staff. So, okay,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, sir. We would like to welcome anyone interested in this agenda item to come to the podium, give your name and address. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. The governing body has been provided with the draft minutes, and the video of the public hearing has been made available. So limit your comments to information not previously shared at the public hearing on January 16th, 2024, or February 20th, 2024. Does anyone from the public have any new information that they would like to share? No. Does the applicant have any further response to the comments of public? No, because there was none. Assuming the council has received all the information they need on this case, you have received an outline of the choices provided under the state statutes for council action KSA 12-757C. Council, I ask you, how do you wish to act?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I move to adopt the Planning's Commission recommendation, special use case Z SU 23-0006, to allow for an intermediate care facility on the property generally located at 224 East Central Avenue, Andover, Kansas, and approve the effectuating ordinance.
Second, Hamilton.
Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. Persons aggrieved by this final decision of the council on this matter have 30 days after today's action within which to appeal to the district court. 16.1 resolution relating to exercise of company's options to purchase, project. Let me say that again. Resolutions relating to the exercise of the company's option to purchase the project. JT is going to speak to us on that.
Mr. Mayor, what you have before you is a resolution authorizing the exercise of the option to purchase property from the city. I want to briefly explain why it is you need to adopt this resolution. In 2013, you issued industrial revenue bonds to pay for the benefit of Andover Apartments LLC to build those apartments. I think locally they're affectionately referred to as Sunstone. The city determined that multifamily housing was a need in the city that was not being met, and you offered an incentive of industrial revenue bonds to build that facility, which made that facility available for up to 10 years of property tax abatement. You did approve some property tax abatement on the apartments. It was a declining property tax abatement that declined over time, 100% in the first year, 10% in the 10th year, and then fully on the tax rolls. 2 years ago, that apartment facility was sold to a new entity, appropriately called Andover Apartments 1 LLC. And that was, at that time, you agreed to the assignment of the IRB lease. Remember, the way IRBs work is the city issues the bonds that are sold to a bond purchaser, and then that money is used to build, in this case, the apartments. The city leases the apartments to the developer for a lease payment that magically equals the principal and interest payment on the bonds. The city never has any obligation to pay the bonds itself. They're solely secured by the rental payments under that lease. In the instant case, the bonds are completely paid off and the rental payments have all been made. And so at the end of that, the quote beneficial owner can exercise its option to purchase by paying the city the $1,000 purchase price, which is intended to be a nominal amount. And now, by contract, you are obligated to allow them to exercise that option to purchase, which is going to make all of those bond documents completely go away. It's going to terminate the lease. It's going to erase the bond indenture. It's going to completely remove all of the guarantees, and the property will actually be deeded back to the owner. The bonds were actually paid off a couple years ago, and staff has been encouraging this particular owner to sort of go ahead and exercise this option to purchase, because after all the benefits are gone, the city really doesn't have an interest in continuing to have its fee title ownership attached to the property. In the instant case, however, the property was financed upon its purchase by Fannie Mae, and they took a leasehold mortgage on the IRB lease. So, we just called Fannie Mae and told them what to do, and it took them a day, and they gave us exactly what we needed. Of course not. We've been waiting a year, and they have figured out that on our advice, they can amend their mortgage to be a mortgage on the land itself, and that's what they're going to do. And they've agreed to this process occurring. So what you will be approving tonight will be authorizing the sale of this property to Andover Apartments 1 LLC. It'll wipe out the lease, the indenture, all of the bond documents, and the city will be completely disassociated from the apartments. I'd encourage you to do the same, and I'd answer any questions you have. There is one other thing that I think should be mentioned. In addition to the need for the apartments, these particular apartment development resulted in a substantial dedication of land for Kellogg. And so the value associated with that was just dedicated to the city without remuneration. I'm not saying that was a consideration in the tax abatement. I just wanted you to know about it, because if another apartment complex showed up, you might consider it differently. Because in this case, there was a dedication of land that the city and state ultimately needed, substantial land right off the frontage of the property. And so I'm not saying that weighed in the decision of whether or not to issue the bonds or give abatement, but it is a distinguishing factor, and I thought we should point it out before you wipe out all these bonds, because I do think it is a unique circumstance.
Thank you, JT. Any questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
So when was the last time we've done a resolution for this IRB? Is this solely the only time Andover has done this? As far as
What do you mean, issued bonds for?
coming off being
no.
done with it, I guess.
No, I'm sure, over decades of issuing bonds, you have a number of facilities that have exercised their option to purchase when the bonds are retired. Off the top of my head, the first one I remember doing as a young man was the Andover Healthcare Center, which was a nursing home. And that probably exercised its resolution option to purchase decades and decades ago when their bonds were paid off. But even on current industrial revenue bonds, whenever they're paid off, the option to purchase is exercised. Off the top of my head, I can't think of your most recent one. When the Holiday Inn Express paid off its bonds, that was the most recent one, and they exercised their option to purchase.
Okay.
I'm not sure about that. I don't know that Sammy Palisades is finished yet. I don't think we're past 10 years on that one.
I don't think that those bonds have been completely retired at this point.
I was just going to add, from a practical place. One thing that Donna and I have noticed many times is that when you go to the county's GIS today, it's going to show that this is owned by the city of Andover, which can cause confusion to the public. And so that's our motivation to want to move this along, is to make it very clear who owns the property, that the city doesn't own an apartment complex, that we're not collecting rent from anybody, things of that nature.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move to adopt a resolution approving and authorizing the sale of the project to the company and the execution of all necessary legal documents, all as prepared by bond counsel and provided for consideration.
Second, Hamilton.
Any further questions or discussion? Thank you, JT, for clearing that up for us. I appreciate it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. I need to open this up right now for public forum. Okay. Before we go forward, I'm going to open the General Obligation Bond Series A 2024 for a public hearing. 7-1, public hearing, General Obligation Series A 2024. And Special Assessment Ordinance, General Obligation Bonds, Series A 2024 as well.
So at this time, if anybody wants to
Oh, I'm
speak
sorry.
about the special assessments that will be coming out of this general obligation bond, that's what this public hearing is for. And then upon the closing of that, then you will have the next item, 17.2, which is where you adopt the special assessment ordinance, which includes improvements in Cornerstone 5th, Heritage 2nd, Prairie Creek 6th, Space Side at Teradyne, Lakeview Heights, Courtyards at Cornerstone.
And no one has anything to say at the public hearing? Okay, sir. Would you state your name and your address, please, sir?
Curtis Nelson, 111 East Stanton Road in Andover. Mr. Mayor, Council, thanks for letting me visit. My concern is this 17.2, the special for Lakeview Heights. I don't know what my options are there. I've not been a part of any of this because I closed on the house at 111 East Stanton the end of July, moved in August. When I bought the property, there was never a mention of any of this in any of the documentation for the house. I understand you're not involved in the sale of the house to me, but the majority of the street in front of my house was already paved. So long story short, I am not at all in favor of that. And I'd like to know what my options are. And if I have no options, who can I go to get documentation of every step in this process? Because I may have legal options with the title company or the sellers of the property.
So this particular special assessment area is unique for Andover because it is one of your sort of what I'm going to call dirt to paved conversions. And so what the city offers is when a majority of the property owners petition, as in this circumstance, and ask to have the streets paved, the city has the option of declaring that advisable and paving the streets and assessing the costs back against the property owners. Les, correct me if I'm wrong, but the city policy for existing streets, because paved streets are beneficial to the city, is to actually pay 50% of those from the city at large. So in this particular circumstance, all the citizens of the city of Andover paid half the cost of paving these people's streets. The reason that's unusual is because in any new development, we make them pay all of the cost of paving the streets. Then, when these individuals asked for that, the city adopted an advisability resolution that we recorded with the Register of Deeds so that any title company would know that these are coming and could see them and would not insure over them. And during that process, then the city undertook to pave the streets. And now that the final costs are known, the city's proposal is to assess 50%, half of the cost of those streets, against the landowner, probably over 15, 20 years. Thank you, Donna. And so they're going to assess that cost over 20 years. That advisability resolution and work ordinance before the street was even started is recorded with the Register of Deeds so that any purchaser of a house should not be duped in to buying it. The place you would want to look if you were the purchaser of a house during this time period is on the title commitment and the title insurance that you received from your title company to see if the title company accepted out those special assessments and or warned you that they were coming. If they did not, you may have an insurance claim for the special assessments. The road is finished, and so there isn't really a way now to stop it. And certainly what the city is considering tonight isn't whether or not the special assessments should be levied or whether or not the appropriation is appropriate. You've decided that at a long time ago meeting before this project even started, and I'm sure before this gentleman owned his house. And so when he bought his house, the title materials should have warned him, and it should have been clearly stated on the title documents that this property would be liable for special assessments up to a certain amount, and then have an advisability resolution that showed up.
And
So
that is my question. It
that's-
was not. There is nothing in it.
Then you would need to contact your title company and ask them what mistake they made or what they messed up, why this advisability resolution was not known to you. That would be an appropriate inquiry.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? How you doing, sir?
Hello. I'm Jacob Burgard. I'm at 114 Hamlin, Lakeview Heights also. Paving's nice. We voted no to it because where our house sits, pull off Andover Road, concrete right into our driveway. We don't really benefit from it. Yeah, we're kind of stuck with a hefty bill that's not planned for our budget, unfortunately, with kids. Sorry for the noise.
It's okay.
And I don't know what the options are for that either. I mean, I sent an email. I was told I get to enjoy 77 feet of pavement in front of my house, but I pay this absorbent amount for the whole thing. It's just kind of concerning. I mean, budget wise, we're tight, not really, weren't planning on that. So I don't know if there's anything we can do about adjusting prorating or anything to make it a little better.
Well, just so everybody understands, and not to discount your issue, but so the cost is spread on a per lot basis. So each lot that butts the paving pays the same. And then it is assessed at only 50%. The city will now take that amount and spread it out over 20 years at the city's interest rate, which is to take the credit of all of the citizens and property in the city so as to get the lowest interest rate possible to spread that over 20 years. All property owners will receive a notice that will give them an opportunity to pay that off in advance if they don't want specials levied on their house, and there's usually 20 to 30 days to do that. and you'll have the option of paying it off early. There will not be a way to get a bank loan to pay off those specials in normal circumstances that will be lower than the interest rate the city receives, because the city's interest rate will be both based on the city's credit, but also based on tax exempt bonds having been issued. So it will be the lowest interest rate the city can apply, spread out over a 20-year period in an attempt to make them as budgetable as possible. At this hearing, what we're looking for is there incorrect math error in how those were applied? And I don't believe that there is. We've reviewed it. Donna's reviewed it, and we think the numbers and the allotments for each property are correct.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? No? All right, we'll close the public hearing and we'll move on to 7.2. Or do we need to vote on one?
We're on to 17.2. So now that you've closed the public hearing, it is the time where you consider the special assessment ordinance, which is for those improvements in the subdivisions that I already mentioned. And as JT mentioned just a moment ago, upon approval of this ordinance, then city staff will notify all property owners in these areas that they have until noon on Monday, March 25th, 2024, to pay those special assessments up front if they should wish to do that and avoid the interest cost.
If I can, I'd just like to add, if they are wanting them spread as specials, they don't have to do anything. If they do nothing, it'll be spread. It's only if they want to pay them off that we need to know that.
And Donna, can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Can you give me the estimate then on the $14,358.93 over the 20 years then?
And until I know the interest rate, it's picking a number.
Okay.
Can I get a motion?
I think JT was
Oh,
gonna
I'm sorry, JT.
figure out.
Oh, I was going to, but then I'm going to take my cues from Donna, because if I took $14,000 and spread it over 20 years and multiplied it times 4.5%, which might be good math, somebody would argue later when it ends up costing $2 more than that a month that I did it incorrectly and that now we need to lower it. So I will just explain the math. It's $14,000 spread over 20 years. If we had a guess an interest rate today, Donna, 4.5% would be a good guess. It will be great if we can do better than that. But you could then take that, realizing that you're paying off a little every year, and run it through one of those amortization calculators and get a good idea of what the monthly cost would be. I don't want to dismiss it as negligible, but it certainly is the best the city can do, and it's only half the cost of the street.
I want to be very clear about this. I've heard the city taking care of it, the city taking care of it, the city taking care of half. The city is not taking care of half. The citizens of Andover, through taxation, is taking care of half. So it's not just the folks at, God, I just drew a blank, man. At
all these places.
Lakeview Heights. The citizens of Andover all together are ending up the 50%, not the city. The city does not pay the tab. The citizens of Andover do through taxation. So I just want to be very clear on that fact, including myself. Can I get a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move to adopt an ordinance levying special assessments against property in Cornerstone Fifth Heritage second, Prairie Creek sixth, Speyside at Teradyne, Lakeview Heights, and Courtyards at Cornerstone for improvements in said additions, and authorizing staff to send notice to property owners in such additions detailing special assessments and allowing such property owners until Monday, March 25th, 2024 at noon to pay said special assessments in full without incurring interest costs related to debt issued for financing such improvements.
Second, Hamilton.
Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 That's 5. All opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. All right, member items, and I'll start with Phil.
I'll just call out that next to the Heritage to the west, that is a public park, city park that is located there. We were there last night. Super nice, especially in the evening. Go enjoy it.
Is it open to the public yet?
Yes.
Technically, it's in the process of being accepted from the contractor. We're working through punch list items and so forth. But we don't have it physically blocked off from the public at this time.
We've got the police and fire gala coming this weekend. We had a chamber mixer last week, and then a fundraiser for the school district last week as well. So packed full of galas and fundraisers, and can't wait to enjoy the police and fire gala this weekend.
I've got nothing.
I'd like to also say what Phil was talking about in the courtyard at the Heritage, and very nice put together, and the walkway down to the water is exceptionally nice, and can't wait to see more people out there in the public enjoying it, and also the additional items that Homer was talking about is coming up. Those are also nice. I want to also throw this out as well. In August, the 24th and 25th at McConnell Air Force Base is the Frontiers of Flight Air Show. This year, it's going to be the Blue Angels, U.S. Navy. In years past, it's been the Thunderbirds, which is Air Force. And I kind of grew up on the Blue Angels, being down near Pensacola. And so I think it's going to be a great event. And this will be another awesome event I can share with my son, who's also stationed at McConnell.
What mind my asking what unit he's in?
He's in the engineering unit.
I don't have anything.
All right. Sometimes we forget how many citizens we have from McConnell Air Force Base in our fine city. In fact, Colonel Smart, who's retiring from the Air Force National Guard very soon, I think next month. I can't remember the exact date. So he's willing to come and speak at events if you want him to. And they're a big part of our community, but we just don't see them as often as we should, or give them the credit that the Meredith thinks that they should have. So they're a great part of our community. And that's all I have. Yes, sir.
I move to adjourn.
Second, Hamilton.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. We are adjourned.